Hey everyone, welcome back to I Would Like to Have a Conversation. Say hey Ruby.
Hello.
Say hey Theo.
Hello.
And today I'm talking to
Todd.
Todd, yeah. And what are we talking about?
Guilt and shame.
Yeah, you guys don't really know much about that, but as a parent, that kind of creeps in on some stuff we do. And we talk about it with Todd through the lens of creating a career that he wants to have. And it was a really good conversation. Really looking forward to it. You guys looking forward to it? Yeah. Alright, so see you later.
Bye.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Like to Have a Conversation. I'm here with Dr. Todd. Theo's loving calling you Dr. Todd too. He's got, he just says all the time, "You're talking to Dr. Todd today?" Like, yeah. So we were messaging back and forth a little bit this week. Last night for me and early morning for you. And we're like, what do I want to talk about today? And you brought up a really good idea. I was curious as to what made it come about. So do you want to share about what it is you want to talk about and where it kind of came from?
Yeah, so what's interesting is we were just getting into it like before this, but I tend to want to talk about things that are present to me, but it's been years in the making to kind of set the stage as far as, and I think we talked about this with finding direction in the clinic, a couple of episodes back, and really feeling that momentum and having a clear vision of where I want to go. What's happening now is when you get that clear vision, we tend to self-sabotage. We tend to find ways to distract us from getting there, thinking that you're doing enough or you're doing all the things that you need to be doing in a manner, in a way that it's that you're used to, I should say, because we're so used to moving at a certain pace that we let things slip through the cracks. And I'll just use the example. Last weekend, one of my other mentor, Chris, as I'm navigating working with him and building this business, I noticed that there were a number of things he was like expecting that I wasn't necessarily meeting to the degree that he wanted me to meet him at, and at this and even though I was doing them, he made it very clear to me on Friday when we had this call, or no, it was actually before that. It was like the week before that, when he asked like what it is that I really want. How I want this clinic to turn out, like the money that I want to have, etc. He says, I feel like the problem that you have is that there aren't any consequences. And that like just smacked me right in the face. And he was right. If I say this is what I want, and on a very personal level, I am struggling with depression. I am struggling with not having like my bank account, not having my life be where I want it to be, then why am I not taking massive action on the things that are going to move that forward, and only that? What am I being distracted by? What am I why am I not just doing these things? And essentially when he proposed it in a way of consequences, I end up taking it to a very like deep, dark place of massive consequences, like losing my family, losing my boys, losing my wife. Like I take it to that point and I bring that to the forefront so I can live in that pain. So it drives me to take action. And what was really cool was this was a big part of the conversation I had with Dr. Stacy. And as soon as I said it out loud for both of us, it hit us both. Not having consequences, it just landed. And it was like an emotional moment for us to get our stuff together and start working together, in a better capacity to move things forward. Now, where does the guilt and shame come in? And what I found was I caught myself, or I end up getting into these cycles. And when I know that I'm ready to either level up, you get taught this same the same lesson that keeps coming up over and over again. Like, 7-8 years later, I'm like, why am I depressed? I thought I moved through this. I thought I worked through this. I thought I could handle my emotions. I understand what emotions are. I know I'm talking really fast, but these are the thoughts that are going through my mind. And I'm like, I don't understand why I'm frustrated still. And part of that was because when you and I discovered what I really wanted, that created another step of clarity, which was driving my brick and mortar business to a point, to a new level. And then fast forward like a couple more weeks or months, however long it's been, I find myself hitting another wall, and I'm not doing the things that are in alignment with the life that I want to create. And so therefore, I just experience a massive amount of guilt and shame around that. But then I stay stuck in that spiral because it's really hard to see the steps that you need to take forward when you're stuck in that guilt and shame spiral, until someone, and he did it in a lovingly way, but a very like, hey, I'm your mentor and I can see this very clearly. But it was when he shared that with me, and it was something that wasn't new to me, but it was new to my wife Stacy, and the reason why it wasn't new to me is because I do things like deathbed meditations. I do think about, not to try to bring them into my life, but I think about these worst case scenarios so I can be prepared for them in an emotional way and in a physical way, whatever way I need to be prepared for them, because I don't ever want that to happen. But at least I've gone there and I understand what can happen if I'm not living in alignment and being the man that I want to be for my, family and for my kids. And that's how I live my life. It's very intense. It's, on a day to day, like this is how I carry myself, because I do have the utmost respect for the people that I work with and that want the best for me. But I can also see how hard it is when you're looking from the outside and you're seeing someone just spin around in this guilt and shame spiral, or not taking massive action, even though you've outlined the path for them, if that makes sense. So having said all that, that's where I'm at, is like, I'm reflecting on kind of moving past this, this guilt and shame spiral that I was in, because I wasn't actually taking action on the things that I said I wanted, and not in a way that is going to create immediate and drastic results, which is also what I'm looking for. So my expectations are high, but my actions weren't meeting those expectations. So
it's cool. Like, it's a deep conversation, and like for people listening, like Todd's talking about it in the sense of his business, but you can talk about this in the sense of transforming your life in any avenue. It's like, what is this thing that's stopping me from achieving the stuff I want to achieve? And it's funny you bring it up, because last week I did my talk for the summit that we've got coming up, and I was talking about this exact thing, and it's kind of like, cool, you're jumping in the boat and you want to set sail on this adventure, which is in your sense, your business. You want to go this way, and you're at the steering wheel, you're looking at it, the wind's taking the sails, this looks great. And as you go on, and all of a sudden it's just like, bang, you just don't get anywhere. Like, what the hell's going on? And you turn around and you see the anchor's down. So you run over, reel up that anchor, go back to the steering wheel and go again. A little bit further, bang, something happens again. And as you turn around, you see this dark figure just running through the shadows. And the analogy I have is like, it's you, where it's your shadow self. The way I was taught is the bound nature from BG and the mindset coaching stuff. It's this version of you that is so shit scared, which is the part of your brain that is so scared of you wanting to change, because the brain doesn't want change. It'll do whatever it can to keep you where you are, because it knows these feelings. So the shame, like you mentioned, the shame guilt spiral, that's the same kind of stuff I have. And it wants you to stay there because it knows it. He's like, I know these feelings. I know what this feels like. So this is cool. This is comfort for me, which sounds really weird because it doesn't feel good. But then the brain is like, this is what I know. I can handle this. So if you look at that in an analogy, it's like you see that shadowy figure and it's you, but it's the scared version of you. And it's a saboteur, but not in the sense of like, I want to fuck you up. It's like, I'm scared. I don't want you to go. I want to keep you here. And like following on with that analogy, it's kind of like, which is what we shared when I did the quitting caffeine episode. It's like having a conversation with that person on why it's so scared for you to move forward. And then with most things, for things to fall like a domino effect, like you said, like you want to go somewhere, like you have high expectations and you want to get there quickly. The easiest way to do that is to lift the anchor, which sounds easy in theory. Like this is hard, like on paper, it's like, oh yeah, no worries, I'll just go and wind it up. But it's kind of like when I did my Bad Nature, CJ the boy, and I wrote the letter to it. It was like a subconscious stream of thought. I had all these, so we'll go through like a tool, list all the behaviors that are not in alignment with the best version of you. And you kind of list them on a piece of paper. And the easiest way to figure that out is like, cool, you got this goal, so your goal. And we can do this with you now if you want. Like, what's the goal and where you want to go? You've already set that. Why won't you make it? And things will pop up. There's all these things that happened in the past. So you go through that and do those things. And then you go, what does that say about you? Each point. Put it next to that one. What does that say about you? And how does that make you feel? That's the bigger one. So you get those three in place. And then you start trying to like look into your past and where it kind of started, if you can. Or you just start writing a letter to this version of this version of you. The Bad Nature you, the saboteur, the shadow, which is you, just shit scared you, that puts it in there. So mine was like procrastinator, escapism, winging it, like in the sense of like I got through school without doing any homework, and I got through school without doing a single assessment, which is probably a bad rap on the school, but I was able to get through totally fine. And then like I didn't put like a massive effort into a lot of things. I just did just enough. And escapism and procrastination and dopamine addiction were the main ones. So when I get frustrated, I go to, my brain's like, you're getting frustrated. Go find something that feels good. And that's where I would go find something that I'm addicted to. Because it would be like straight dopamine here. I'd be like, it feels better. And then the spiral, the shame, guilt spiral would kick in. So all those things were listed. And when I started writing, it was just writing to the younger version of me. And that's when I wrote the name CJ the boy afterwards. So that, when people, like everyone listening, like when you are going somewhere and you feel like you're constantly just fucking it up, it's just your subconscious trying to protect you from something that it did protect you from when you were younger. Trauma's on like different levels for everybody, but there's something that happened that you use a tool that saved your life, so to speak, then, but you don't need it anymore now. But your subconscious keeps using that tool because it's the only thing it knows. And it's been wired in over time. So what needs to happen is like which is like what you said, like the consequence thing. That's like a good start because it's like it builds the fear, creates movement a lot. So if you have fear of like the worst case scenario, it makes you do enough to make sure that will never happen. But it always ends up being survival, which is good to get things moving. I think that's okay. Like when it comes down to it, you will figure out a way to survive. So you can put that in there. And I kind of like that as like the way to get things moving forward. But then you flip it to free nature version, which is like, what does your perfect average day look like? All those kinds of things. And what does that version of you do every day? And you constantly keep rewiring your subconscious to that version of you. But the big thing would be is like, once you create these two versions, your bound nature, free nature version, we call it in Space Builders the shadow and the hero. Once you create them, you create like this switch. So you can, especially when you make your bound nature, so this would be good for you. When you do make your bound nature version, you become so aware when you fall back into the trap. So my frustration part, my boredom part, where all those addictive behaviors would come in, I can pick it up so much easier now. And like, why? Like, why am I getting frustrated here? What's going on? And then what do I need to do? Like, instead of going into the shitty behaviors that I used to have, I would go into, I'll go for a walk. I'll go play with Simon, or I'll go journal it and write it down and write about my free nature version, just to keep teaching my brain is like, nah, I want to be this guy. I don't want to be this. I don't want to kill off CJ the boy because he has tools that are useful if it ever comes around again. I'm like, yeah, the whole sit down, it's cool, go play kind of thing. So you're giving yourself permission to play in the new arena you want to be, instead of like feeling bad about the bound nature, because it's not bad. It's going to be helpful in the future for some reason. So I think stacking it like that works really well. So it's kind of like, yeah, like consequences work, which we know it does. We've talked to people and it's like, say in the transformation, like, where do you want to go? How excited would it be there? All that kind of stuff you talk about there. It's like, what happens if you do nothing about it? Like, it's called like ripping the rug out. If you do nothing about this, what does it feel like then? 10 years from now, everything's still the same. That creates movement. And then once you get moving, I think the energy shifts, or needs to shift to a more aspirational version. And then talking in the sense of like, you've already achieved it. Like, you literally journal every day. So for me, it's like taking snippets of my free nature story, like a paragraph or whatever, and just journaling about that and saying, why is this true? And just doing it over and over and over again. And then things just kind of, it's really weird and it sounds really woo-woo-y, but things start falling into place then, because it stops being a force, which a fear-based start is force, which is cool. It's movement. It's like pushing a rock up the hill. That first push is hard, so you need force. And then you figure out the most energy efficient way to do it, which is the flowy kind of thing. So yeah, it's super. So many people listening to this will need to have this conversation. It's funny, like with Space Builders, we're literally called, like, our tagline, which is what we want to do with parents, is like, we see you trying really hard to do all this stuff and we see it not working. Let's have the conversation no one is brave enough to have. Like, figure out why these things aren't working and what to do about it. And it's so much across the board. And it's like the one thing, which is just up here, of like rewiring the story. You know, that was a big tangent, but not tangent. But does that make sense?
I appreciate you taking me through that aspect of it in a more practical way to work through it for myself. I know you've spoken a lot about like CJ and this like alter ego, or for lack of a better term. Yeah, I'm starting to see that more, because I see how much I've shifted over the years, you know, from somebody who drank to somebody who doesn't, and all these different things I'm slowly working on, all the while trying to be gentle in ways, because change is hard and change is difficult. But, you know, this is also, you know, coming from a mentor that has for years has heard me talk about like the frustrations. And so, but it's not to discredit like all of the work I've done, you know, in the past 7 to 8 years, because come a long way, but it makes sense to sit down and acknowledge those things, because I recognize all the same patterns, like when I'm trying to escape, when I'm not, feeling comfortable in my own skin. I have my own take on boredom. If I could do anything, it would be literally to get rid of the word, because I just don't. This might sound weird to people. I don't think boredom exists.
Go into that. Let's talk about that. What do you mean?
Well, I kind of took it and expanded. I kind of took it and expanded upon. I remember my father used to say, because and I was young when this was super impressionable, and I just would, I don't know, I walked up to my dad and I would be like, I'm bored, I'm bored. And his response, I'm telling you, I must have been like 7, 8, so pretty young. And he goes, well, if you're bored, it's your fault. And I was like, woo. But over the years I sat with that, and I realized that I just don't think boredom exists. I think that if you can't be with yourself, we came up with a term called boredom to identify this space of not being able to be with ourselves, but really it's a distraction in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because if you can't literally sit and be at peace, because I think the term that we're looking for is peace, it being or being, with yourself. And to me, the idea of boredom is really just you distracting yourself. It's like a step before actually distracting yourself with something or consciously choosing to do something else. It's that step of really just distracting yourself. So you're not bored. You're just trying to figure out, do I actually want to go do something consciously or unconsciously, or do I want to sit here by myself? And so you're really just deciding. You're not bored.
Yeah.
You just have a decision to make, and you're not making the decision. So call it indecision, but don't call it boredom.
I get it. I get what you're saying now, because I kind of agree. It's like, I was talking to someone last night at Risky Kids when I was taking Ruby there, and we were talking about like how kids are so scared to be bored now, but they're just so scared to sit in their own thoughts and in distraction, which is kind of the same as what adults, or it is kind of the same as what adults are too. And I'm actively seeking white space in my calendar to find times to be bored, only because that's when I'm creating. I'll think of things to help people or whatever. Then, otherwise, I'm just constantly like moving through shit. So for my way to find boredom or peace or thinking time is when I do my runs now without the headphones. So I'm not distracting myself away from the run. I'm just like, even in the garage gym now, I even train without any sound or anything. Just completely silent and just thinking while I'm doing stuff, and I'll run in here and write shit on the whiteboard. Kat wigs out. She's like, I don't know how you do it. It's insanely boring. I'm like, yes, it is.
And I want to stay on this because you brought up like another point to expand upon where I was going with that. I just saw an article about this one woman in particular, but I've been seeing these articles about people, and I'm going to use this term that might be offensive, and it's a sexual term, but they're raw dogging long flights. They're calling it. Okay, so they're going no headphones, no reading, no nothing. They're just.
I saw this as a thing, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so the latest article I saw was like this woman who it was just like these deep, dark thoughts and I'm like, you're just experiencing being with yourself for an extended period of time because you're so damn distracted. So like all of these, how the media always tries to portray something like negative or, these headlines, but I just laughed because I was like, oh, so you're actually spending time with yourself, and yeah. And you know what, now that I think about it, I guess like, even on a deeper level, what my dad probably meant was if you can work through all of that, like, I don't want to go do anything. I don't need to go do anything. I want to sit right here. And you still can't be okay with yourself. Then that boredom just rings from somebody who is just, maybe you're not, like, maybe you need to go live a different life. Maybe you need to live a more exciting life or, have better thoughts per se. So if you're bored of like yourself, again, I go back to my dad. It just stuck with me. It's like, well, it's your fault. Like, just like go figure it out. Like, and And ever since then, like I catch myself because sometimes it's habit. But I rarely will say I'm bored, because as soon as it starts to come out, I go through that checklist. I go through that checklist of, basically it's like, all right, well, am I just trying to distract myself from being with myself? And that's it most of the time, because then when I just sit there and I breathe through it and I work through it and I let my thoughts, move, flow like a river, then I'm like, I'm not bored. I was just nervous about what was going to come up.
Yeah.
And really, I was, this boredom is my way to distract all that, really. So, anyways, I know that was a whole 90-degree turn.
Yeah, I know. There was something we mentioned too, and I was going to come back to it, and I've lost it now. But it was, I'll see if it will come back. But no, I've completely lost it now. Oh, I lost my headphones too. That was a good tangent. I like that tangent. It'd be swinging back to like the unconscious blocks or whatever.
Yep.
Like the sense of boredom. Boredom is my bound nature. So when I'm like scared of boredom, is part of my bound nature, and then my free nature is enjoys white space, is the way I wrote it. Enjoys just time to do shit. So it's like flicking the switch. It's like, oh, I'm getting bored. It's like, no. It's white space. It's good time. It's fun time. So it's like, it's really simple, but it takes a little bit to get used to the idea there's a gap between the input and then the output. There's a little gap in between there when you can process just a moment in time where you can decide whatever the action is you're going to take. And I think for a lot of people listening, all 6 of them, if you kind of like, this is literally the anchor that prevents you from achieving anything you want to achieve. And once I figured this out, I was like, fuck, like, it's one of those things I wish I knew this like 10 years ago. And understanding what it is that was the thing that protected you for so long, and being okay with it and sitting with it, like we're talking about with the boredom thing, those thoughts that come in is the subconscious coming in to tell you a story. You can write a different story and shift it to where you want it to be. You don't have to keep falling into the same spirals and stuff. And this is where I was going to come to. It's coming to me now. So, you mentioned the alcohol thing, and like, I quit alcohol because I was an alcoholic. I just quit caffeine, and I had to cut back from really hard workouts and shit like that. So the one thing I'm doing with my free nature is I've started changing the story of like, absolute freedom for me will be able to sit down at a fire in the backyard and have a glass of wine with Kat, knowing that I can have one, I can go back inside, and I'm done. And I, like, BG planted that in my head. I was like, because then it goes from like me being like, I can't. I'm putting up this huge barrier, and it's not like it's hard anymore. It's easy as shit. But I was always this barrier, like I can never go back there because I'm scared. And it just completely changed the story from I'm scared shitless to touch it to like, I wonder if I could. And it's just changed, and everything calmed down. Like I went because I went for a run with Kat, like literally a couple of days after I had this convo. I was running with Kat, and I was like, so you're working on this stuff. Because she was never with me before. I was like, when I was an alcoholic, she only met me afterwards, and she hears all the stories, and she's like, there's no way we would be together. So I was running with her, and I was like, so I had this idea, like, it'd be kind of cool to sit around a fire and have a glass of wine with you. And she just stopped running. It's like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's just this thing that I'm working on with BJ, and the idea of like, that'd be cool. That'd be like me having total control over my actions. When everything else I've done before is I don't have control, so I have to remove it completely. This changes the convo. And she's like, okay. And we started running again. She's like, are you worried about it? And I was like, a little. Like, I don't think I'm ready yet. And we kept jogging through, and then we both come to the same answer nearly at the same time. It was like, I think it's cool because it gives you the choice. I can choose. And because I was like, she's like, do you even like wine? Like, not particularly. I don't know. And then it was like I have the 0% beers, and I do like them. And I'm like, I can just keep having them. So it made a very weird shift to where it was like, nah, I can't trust myself to do it. To now it's like, oh, I can if I want to. I just don't want to. Because of the lagging indication of whatever's going to come afterwards, of like being hungover around the kids. Like, that's the one thing. I was like, there's no way I would want to get drunk with the kids waking up the next morning. It was hard enough me waking up the next morning without anyone around me. And then, it kind of, which was really cool. And then the caffeine thing, I was like, I wonder if I could do that with the caffeine as well, which I would like to, because when we go out, instead of only going out and having almond hot chocolates, which is delicious, but I would like to go out and have a coffee with Kat at a cafe. And then the way I would play it is just like do it as a social thing and not as a crux to get through something.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of, that's what was coming up in my head when you were talking, and I wanted to share that because it was like, it completely shifted everything. And that's where the free nature, bound nature thing was like so powerful. And when I see it happen in other people, where it's kind of like, nah, I can't do that. I just get to, I'm all or nothing. I get addicted, which is just a story, which is usually what my story was. And now it's just like, I get to choose or do as much as I can through the constraints I put in place, or whatever it is. I don't think there's a big takeaway from that or not, but yeah.
Well, I think, I believe that there is, I think there's probably an initial level that many people are going to want to view this on. And that is the idea of creating a different future, right? And so seeing that future, and in your context, it's how we're able to shift our view of this future of the bound. And I'll get to the bound nature versus free nature, because I think that's a deeper discussion after we can get people to visualize this new life and begin to accept that it's possible. And I think like working with people, and you can correct me or tell me if it's different, but that is one of the biggest things that I see that people don't realize, is they don't think this new future is possible.
Yeah.
And then as they do, and their life begins to change, and thanks to you now after this conversation, bringing in the concept of bound nature versus free nature, I think when people are ready for it, allows for them the opportunity to see how much, which can be overwhelming for people, but how much, and there are going to be some scientists who argue that we aren't in control, but that we do have that much agency. I will say something because I think it'll be important for you. I'm going to let you finish off because you've had some really profound things. There is one, and I'll mention him. I can't remember his name on the Instagram, but he's actually like the Weight Watchers doctor, and Dr. Arnolfsky or something like that. And I haven't had like the balls to, or the you can edit that out. I haven't had the to want to call him out, but the way that he communicates about obesity and how it's not a choice, and I feel like he's just pulling this like agency away from people. And I'm not saying that there's not a lot of psychological variables that go into someone, or even genetic variables that do go into making it extremely hard for someone to lose weight. I'm not discounting all that, nor do I have the education that he has on all of that right now, as I look to hopefully get some resources from him and try to see where he stands on it. But I think it's really important that we don't take that decision and that power and that agency away from people either. And I think he's tiptoeing that line when he communicates the way he communicates about this stuff. And of course, him being a huge advocate as a medical doctor of, the GLP-1 antagonist. So I'll just say that maybe he hears this and listens and we can call him out. But I also want him to know, like, I don't have the education information that he does. I just, from this conversation, I think it's so important how much agency we can develop when we start to understand our own mind and understand, our shadow it does take a huge responsibility to show up in that way and be that to be that in control. I'm probably using the wrong word. And that can be overbearing for some people, all that change at once, which is why we teach people that, let's work on small changes at a time. But I'll leave it at that because I feel like I just kind of took us in a weird turn there about calling somebody out. But anyways, just going back to the agency aspect of things and working through all this and being able to make decisions for ourselves.
Well, what you said about this doctor, think about how powerful stories are. Nothing against this doctor. He can come after us if he wants to. But imagine if you remove hope from someone. That's pretty much what a statement like that says. Like, you're completely removing any chance that they have in their brain that they'll be able to make a change, that they have any control over the change they can make. Yeah, it's very, very hard. It's very, very challenging. And maybe it's true. I'm kind of on the same fence as you. I don't believe it's true. Like, I think everyone can change their story. And removing that hope just feels so wrong to me. Like, imagine a society without hope. Like, it's just destructive. So I see those messages all the time too, and I want to go into like ranty tanty. I'm like, this is just a shit message. It's like, yes, weight loss is 100% hard. Yes, and some people have it way harder than others. But they're the transformations that count. Like, all transformations count, but the ones that have it really challenging and they still do it. They still show up because they have hope that it will change. That's powerful. They're the ones that move needles and change the world and do all that kind of stuff because they create a transformation through so much adversity and so much stuff that they learn so many tools that they can pass on to other people. Versus the person who can fly through it and gets it really easy. They don't have anything to teach because they didn't come up against obstacles. It's only when you come up against obstacles that you have something to teach somebody else because you've overcome a thing, a block for yourself in a unique way that you can probably pass on. So it's kind of, that just sort of fired me up too. Like, it's just a removal of hope. And when you take hope away from people, it's so detrimental. Like, it's just like settling in life. I was talking about this with the lady I was talking to at Risky's last night, where it's like, because we were talking about intimacy with partners and connection and all this kind of stuff while kids were upstairs mucking around. We talked for like 45 minutes and it went super fast. But then we were both just like, no one has these conversations. Oh, there is people that listen, not no one, but a lot of people don't. And I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I sort of think like there is that lack of hope and excitement. And that's just why I lean on adventure a lot. Because it's like it's a very easy way or simple way to bring in that excitement and hope into your life if you feel like there is none there. It's like, go find something that creates adventure. And let's be honest, like, parenting is probably the world's greatest adventure anyway. It's just a different kind of adventure. Right. Same with building businesses. I think that's why we gravitate to it so much. The hope and the dream of making it work is what drives us to keep doing it. And the exciting part is like fuels the fire, the ups and the downs and all that kind of stuff. It's all the problems we overcome to get to where we want to go, and the setbacks, all that kind of stuff. All that shit lights me up. I love talking about that stuff because it's something we've overcome and we're still moving forward. So yeah, I think it was a very good thing to bring up, because I think there's a lot of people that would hear these things on social media. This is a good reminder for me to pull back from social media a bit as well. Because if you think about, I was looking through the lens of like all the stuff going on in the world right now, the wars that are just sort of teetering on the edge of just blowing over to something massive. And I read that stuff because it sounds really morbid, but I read it because I find it interesting on the dynamics of what's going on. And then Kat's like, how do you read that stuff and just not just go into a massive hole? And hope, like, if I need to pull back, because when I start reading it too much, I'm like, oh, the world's going to shit. And it's just like losing hope. And you need to pull away from that thing so you have that capacity to dream again. And like you said, like, it is really hard for people to dream. We've got to finish soon, I know, time-wise, to dream about a future that they can't see. And finish off, I reckon, be bold. Write a dream that feels so out of reach that you're like, how the hell am I going to figure out how to get there? Doesn't matter. You plant the seed. Your brain's going to start figuring it out straight away. Things will start falling in alignment and start coming to you because you've put in the story into your brain that this is what you want. And then you start in the sense of like, well, we would do. It's like, take our 2-year vision story and just journal about it every day, and then over and over and over and over again. Stuff will just fall into place. Things just start happening. It's really bizarre.
I love it.
It's kind of woo-woo. But yeah, it works. This is a really good call. That was cool.
Yeah, I love it because we never know what we're going to talk about. And I'll try to do a quick wrap up. So if you catch yourself in a guilt and shame spiral, if you feel stuck, if you feel like you just like, or, you know, you build up this momentum and you just keep hitting the same wall or a similar wall over and over again, reach out to us. Yeah. Come on, have a conversation if you want. But at the same time, be open and willing to have that conversation, so you can just blast through that next barrier, if you will. I think that's so important is to be ready for that conversation, because for me I was so tired of having the same conversation with my mentors and other people that I started feeling embarrassment. And, you know, in my mind, I just wanted to have the same conversation. I wanted to have a different conversation, meaning that I've got different problems to solve now instead of the same ones. So, but yeah, if you're struggling with any of that, please reach out. This is the stuff that we love to help people work through. And yeah.
And like,
I'll leave it at that.
We're not perfect. So the shit that we're missing in our action steps that we're showing up for, that we are meant to be accountable for. And it's just us learning to flip the switch like everybody else. Yeah.
And having a conversation like this, like I didn't know I was going to come on and get coached, and, you know, so, but we also need to be reminded, because the exercise that you shared was an exercise that you've shared before. But sometimes it doesn't always land when we're ready, and that's okay. Yeah. But this is the reason why we had this conversation. This is the reason why I brought all this up, because now this lands for me, to be able to go have a conversation with, you know, this other version of myself who, I used to think I was saying bye to them, or they were like the part of me was dying. But through my spiritual work, I understand more now. Like you had said, it's more about integration. Let me take from them things that are useful, and then let's just put these other things on the shelf. And you know, at times when you're bored, take a look at the things on the shelf and unpack them more if you need to. But anyway, yeah, don't cry to me when you're bored, because I'm gonna tell you.
Like and subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yes.
I'm gonna get better at putting stuff in the show notes.